Breaking news here, Steve, on MSNBC. Dylann Roof will get the death penalty. That is what these 12 jurors have unanimously decided today. Dylann Roof will get the death penalty for 18 of these 33 federal charges that he was convicted on just last month. Dylann Storm Roof, 22 years old, now becomes the first person in America to be given the death penalty in federal court for a hate crime, Steve. This marks the end of a very emotional, difficult, and historic trial here in Charleston, South Carolina. This jury, comprised mostly of white women, they have decided that Dylann Roof will die by lethal injection after having killed these 9 African-American church members at Emmanuel AME Church on June 17th, 2015, here in Charleston, South Carolina. The prosecution today, in their closing argument, they went through just vivid details of each of these victims we have come to know so well throughout this process, of what each of them saw in their last moments together in that church. They saw fear and they saw Dylann Roof, and he went through, the prosecutor, through the premeditation, the planning that Dylann Roof undertook in doing this, and then his final objective, to incite others to engage in a race war. I also want to explain to our audience, Steve, why the jury might have taken 3 hours almost to get to this conclusion. They had to go through what is called a verdict form, and that is a similar process than the one that was undertaken during the Boston Marathon bomber trial, during the Tsarnaev trial, where they basically had to weigh in aggravating factors and mitigating factors. So these factors that worked for and against Dylann Roof. Some of the aggravating factors are, for example, the number of victims he killed, the vulnerability of the victims, the fact that more than 3 of his victims were over 70 years of age. And then they had to weigh that against the mitigating factors, the fact that Dylann Roof had no prior record of violence, for example, the fact that he was 21 years old when he committed these murders. But today, with this sentence, with this decision, we know that they found the aggravating factors to sufficiently outweigh the mitigating factors. Again, each juror is now being asked to confirm death sentence one by one. And as I stated before, Steve, this marks the end of this emotional, historic trial here in Charleston. Death for each count for Dylann Roof, and he now becomes the first person in America to get the death penalty in federal court for a hate crime. There's more to come for Dylann Roof. His formal sentencing hearing, that may come as early as tomorrow. Judge Gergel then has to decide whether he will be kept in a state prison or in a federal prison. And that is Dylann Roof's fate. His fate was sealed today. Again, historic day here in Charleston, South Carolina.
And Mariana, just quickly, I know this was sort of operating on 2 tracks or 2 potential tracks here. You had the federal case. That's what we're talking about, a federal trial, federal conviction, federal sentence. What about the issue of a state trial? Is that completely moot now? Do they just not have a trial on state charges? Do they do that anyway for some sort of symbolic reason? Where does that go?
It's very interesting that you asked that. You'll remember that the state trial where Dylann Roof is facing the murder charges, that was postponed pending this decision, but that can be rescheduled any moment now if state prosecutors want to, in fact, prosecute, and they may do that for several reasons. I mean, trials like this one, this federal trial, they can spend years on appeals here. This sentence, this decision that came down today, it can be changed, it can be appealed. So, you know, it's likely that the state prosecutors want to make sure that Dylann Roof does pay at least for the murders that were committed, and there's no doubt that he in fact killed those 9 parishioners at Emmanuel AME Church here in Charleston. Steve.
All right. Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.